Hello, Chamber faithful. Welcome to our third legislative update of 2022. I'm Jeremy Field, your host for this event. The Boise Metro Chamber is the only five-star accredited member of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in the state of Idaho. That distinction helps us to advocate and educate on issues that impact our members. The programs and services we provide support four core areas: economic vitality, advocacy, education, and member engagement. We're excited to continue to provide high-quality educational content today. It, however, would not be possible without the help of our sponsors, Optum and AT&T. We'd also like to recognize our media partners, the Idaho Statesman, Idaho Press, Idaho Capital Sun, and the Idaho Education News, who help ensure this program is available to audiences throughout Idaho. And now a word from our presenting sponsor, Optum.
For the last few years, life has been more difficult than ever for young people in Idaho. Many young Idahoans are struggling more than ever with thoughts of self-harm, depression, isolation, and hopelessness. 1 in 10 Idaho youths attempted suicide, and that needs to stop. Optum Idaho's Hello Idaho can help. It's a healing space with great resources supporting good mental health in Idaho. Bring the happiness back. Learn more at OptumIdaho.com.
Well, thank you, Optum. And we really appreciate the support of our sponsors. So thank you very much. Today, I want to introduce our panel. We are very grateful for our legislators joining us. It's a busy time, and for them to take a few moments with us, we really appreciate it, especially for our House members who are kind of coming right back off of a floor work to join us. But I've gone to my straight on camera shot for all of you so that they can come on and not worry about what the background is while they get ready to engage in this conversation. But really want to thank everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce our guests, co-chairs of the Joint Financial Appropriation Committee, Senator Jeff Agenbrod and Representative Rick Youngblood, as well as committee member Representative Brook Green, will be our guest today. Senator Agenbrod was born in Boise and is a fifth-generation Nampa resident, where he graduated from Nampa High School. He attended college at the University of Idaho, where he studied business finance, as well as the Northwest Agricultural Credit School at Washington State University and the Pacific Coast Banking School at the University of Washington. Professionally, Senator Agenbrod has spent 22 years as a commercial banker, 12 years as a small business owner, and is the former chairman of the St. Alphonsus Medical Center in Nampa, past vice chairman of the Nampa Chamber of Commerce, as well as the past president of the Snake River Stampede. In fact, while we were waiting for our program to start, Senator Agenbrod and I were able to visit a little bit about the program Yellowstone that we both have fond feelings for. So it's really nice to have him on this program. His wife Patricia and him have 2 children. Next, Representative Rick Youngblood was born here in Idaho and attended North Idaho College and the College of Idaho. Like Senator Agenbrod, he is a graduate of the Northwest Agricultural Credit School, Washington State University, as well as a graduate of the Pacific Coast Banking School, University of Washington, and the American Institute of Banking. And in his day job, make sure I read my notes right, in his day job, and if that weren't enough, and with all of his legislative responsibilities, he's also the Kenyan Highway District 4 Commissioner Chair. And I really don't know how he does everything he does. He was the president of an engineered wood products and commercial development company for 10 years and has been in banking for 30, where he specializes in corporate and executive management. He serves on the Economic Outlook and Revenue Assessment Committee, the Credit Rating Enhancement Committee, and the Idaho Public Safety Communications Commission. His spouse, Arlene, and he have 2 children and 6 grandchildren. And our final guest today is Representative Brook Green, who was raised in Los Alamos, New Mexico. She has a master's degree in business administration from Northwest Nazarene University and degrees in both communication and marketing technology from Boise State University. She is a senior transportation planner and certified as a professional community economic development developer through Northwest Community Economic Development Institute, which is a great thing. I participated in the first year of that program, and it's wonderful. She served as the chairperson of the Boise City Open Space and Clean Water Advisory Committee in 2011. The chamber is proud that she's a graduate of Leadership Boise And in 2014, she was recognized as one of Idaho's Business Review's Women of the Year honorees. In 2010, she was recognized as one of Idaho Business Review's 40 Under 40, and she was also a recipient of the 2018 Woman of the Year by Idaho Chapter of Women in Transportation. Thank you all for joining us. All right. So we're still waiting for Representative Brook Green. I'm sure someone has grabbed her as she was trying to get off of the House floor, but we'll be able to add her to the conversation when she's able to join us. But Senator Egenbrod and Representative Rick Youngblood, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, the first question I have for you all is, obviously we're here to talk about the budget, and it's a big year for budgeting in the state of Idaho. The Joint Financial Appropriations Committee is one of the most influential committees in the Idaho legislature. Its members review each line of the proposed state budget. Members with a record state surplus and the passage of the federal infrastructure and ARPA funds, how has this year been different from other years during this budgeting process? Representative Youngblood, would you mind starting?
No, I'd be happy to. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you great.
Well, again, it's a pleasure to be with everyone. Thank you, Jeremy. It's always fun to share what's happening over here at the Capitol. Again, with this large amount of funds, probably for me, the biggest challenge has been, and it's not really a challenge, but it's just getting funds out the door. Other words, on the House and Senate floors and getting budgets completed. As you know, this is my 5th term, and I've sat on appropriations all 10 of those years, and this is by far the largest amount of funds, in addition to the ARPA funds that we've ever got to work through. So really, the challenge really is, again, where do you put all these funds? Everyone has their hands out, and again, I appreciate the good work of the JFAC committee. And probably, again, most significant, and my co-chair will say this as well, it's not using ongoing funds for one time, or using one-time of funds for ongoing activities and costs. That's huge. This ARPA funds certainly were a major increase to our general fund revenue, and we've got to acknowledge that and pay attention to that, and not to use those one-time funds for ongoing expenses. Senator.
Thank you, Co-Chair. And first, I'd like to say as well, thank you for allowing us to be here, Jeremy. And it's my pleasure and privilege to visit with the Voice Chamber members and those others that are tuning in. I want to say I'm blessed to be working with a fellow banker and my co-chair, and I'll call him my senior co-chair because this is my first year sitting in the chairmanship of the committee. I'm a 3-term senator. So I'm in my 6th year, and I've served all 6 of those years in JFAC. And this is, as my good co-chair said, this is the largest amount of money that we've had to deal with. I really equate it to setting 3 budgets versus just one in a normal year. We do have to set our regular agency budgets, but then we have the $1.9 million, and that's really a 2-year surplus. And we need to keep that in perspective when people are talking about that. And that's not all money in the bank. There's still a lot of that is based upon projections through the end of this fiscal year, which is June 30th. And as we look at our revenue projections, and not just the projections, but how the actual monies are coming in, we're struggling to reach some of those projections. So it'll be interesting the next few months to see where we go. So we do have a moving surplus target there. And then we do have the ARPA monies, the 1.1 billion that the federal government sent to us nearly a year ago, that we've put into a savings account to be appropriated this year and then spent over the next 3 or 4 years. As you can imagine, no matter how much money you have, there's always more need, and we are trying to be extremely careful not to grow state government, and not to commit one-time funds, which the ARPA funds clearly are. In largely the budget surplus monies we're considering one-time funds as well. not to commit ongoing expenses to one-time funds, leaving a hole in future years. So it's really important that we take a good, solid look at the opportunity to make investments in Idaho that will pay dividends into the future. These investments would be on our transportation system, our infrastructure, which includes broadband, those type of things. Yesterday, we took what I consider to be pretty significant action in JFAC, and we passed through JFAC a $176 million bill that pays off the majority of our bonds. So we are nearly debt-free in Idaho, and I think that's good fiscal management of one-time dollars.
No, it's been an impressive year to watch as you all members of the committee, the governor's office, other legislators, prioritizing and keeping this fiscal conservative tradition in Idaho alive. And we have an incredible interest rating as a result of the way that our government does business and how we keep our house in order. You mentioned that if projections were to, maybe not reach what we thought at certain surplus levels, what do you as a committee have to do to prepare for in the event that there's a shortfall in those projections?
Go ahead, Co-Chair.
No, go ahead, Senator. You can answer that.
Okay. Well, we have to deal with a moving target. So we try to, this year, we're trying to leave about $220 million on the bottom line as that cushion, a good fiscal cushion. Just like your home budget, you try not to spend your last dollar in case something happens relative to the revenue or expenses. But in addition to that, we have record rainy day savings. We're approaching $1 billion in our combined savings account, and this is for education, for our general budget as well. And so we're doing those kind of things, consistent with how you would manage your own home budget. If you have some extra money, you don't run out and spend it or leverage it. You put some away and you pay off some of your debt, and that's exactly what we're doing here.
Thank you very much, Representative Green. We're so glad you could join us. We realized that we read your resume and let everyone know that you were likely waylaid on your way off the House floor by a bunch of people. And people, if you're familiar with the legislature, representatives, senators, they are grabbed as soon as they come out of a committee hearing or off a House floor to let them hear about whatever they heard that day or just something else, to try to bend their ears. And so you realize how tough that can be, and we're really appreciative to you as well, Representative Green, to join us today.
Yeah, thank you, and I apologize for being late. I was recovering from a bill that I'm glad it's done with. So.
Well, I'm glad that you're here, and no apologies necessary. We actually were just, we were talking about this year being such an incredible year for budget surpluses, and with the federal dollars that have come in with the ARPA law and with the infrastructure bill that passed. How do you feel that this has been? Has it been different than prior years? Tell me what your experience has been as being part of the JFAC committee with this kind of funding available.
Yeah, sure thing. And thank you, Jeremy. This is actually my first term on JFAC. And so I look to my more senior members, Representative Youngblood and Eggenbrod, who are certainly a little more seasoned when it comes to this, but I will say, I'm really eager to see these dollars get put towards one-time expenditures. There's no better opportunity where we have this much infusion of dollars into the state that we cannot build for our future. And so, I certainly am supportive of all the efforts pertaining to building our one-time enhancements. And I say that because, facility enhancements, capital improvements, roads, broadband is certainly something I'm incredibly interested in. This is where we need to be taking those dollars and really planning and funneling them to our projects that are going to give us our long-term gains. And that's buying stuff where, building and buying stuff that is going to be around 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. And so I'm eager to see those transportation dollars coming in as a transportation planner. I certainly have got ideas, and I recognize and applaud both the governor and the budget for putting forward some good plans for our infrastructure.
No, thank you so much. It's wonderful to have your professional background in the legislature. And, I hear about these stories of these one-time funds, and I can't help but think of all the little communities that I love to recreate in, and just the issues that they've had with whether it's, their water systems that are decades past their useful life cycle, and their city employees have been plugging the holes in those water systems. Concerns, just even the water pressure is enough to deal with a fire event in town. These funds are going to be put to great use, and it's wonderful to hear that the legislature is prioritizing getting these projects done with, so that not expecting that the federal government's going to print off trillions of dollars every few years to make these kinds of ongoing operations happen. So that's wonderful. So thank you so much. I want to go on to our next question, everyone. And here I'll take Representative Green off the spotlight for a second, because none of us want to be on the big screen for too long. Each year, the governor lays out a budget to address priorities for the state. Can you educate us on what it's like to work with the executive branch on a budget when you've been doing that kind of, it's your job to write the budget. So what happens when the governor comes in and he comes with this plan at the beginning of the session? What's that like? And Representative Youngblood, would you mind taking the first crack at it?
Sure. Thank you, Jeremy. Probably a couple of things. Again, the process, and for those who may not know the process, the governor has his analysts and his teams that work with agencies during the year, and the legislature, we have our legislative analysts that work with the agencies as well. So when we come into session, we see a budget that really addresses the governor's plans for his state of the state. So I was told early in my service to JFAC that the budgets were always the governor's budget, but yet the legislature sets the spending of those dollars in the appropriation. And what I kind of learned in the very beginning is that I had an opportunity, and I learned this from a prior JFAC member who had been on the committee for 12 years and kind of mentored me, that I could visit with agencies even prior to the governor's state of the state. And I've done that over the years, and to really understand what's the priority of these agencies, not necessarily saying this is exactly what the governor wants, but again, what are the agencies really wanting in their budgets, and what is their needs, particularly for their line item needs each year. And in experiencing that with them, I was able to kind of get a better handle on what was going on. Some of the questions that were asked, some of the needs that were really a priority for some of the agencies. And again, once we start meeting as JFAC and start setting agency budgets, they have their governor's request, and legislature looks at the budgets. We don't want to get too far apart, because not only do they have to pass the House and Senate, they have to be signed by the governor. And although we've had a few budget bills come back from our House floor, I don't know that I've ever experienced one where the governor said, no, he's going to deny it. So there's some thoughts there, Jeremy.
That's great. Representative Green, what do you think about that?
Well, we certainly take into account the governor's budget, and we get the briefing before, as we gear up for the session. I will say, being a minority on, a member here at the legislature, being on JFAC has really been really impactful, because as a minority, we look to each other, and we're just trying to put forward good budgets that complement much of our policies. And that's why I really enjoy JFAC. And, there was many times where throughout this, summer up until the session, we'd go and meet with our agency heads, and we'd go and meet, with governor's office about important issues that we'd like to see move forward. And as a minority, it has certainly been a great experience to be able to influence and see good dollars go towards good projects. And so, but we definitely look to the governor's budget, and to Youngblood mentioned, it's like we don't want to get too far off. And partly it's because we want to complement the efforts, but also ensure that we're putting forward good projects and funding good projects. So it's not a 1 month, 2 month, 3 month effort. A lot of this work is taking place long before we get here. That means we're working all the time as well.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Agenbrod, do you have anything to add to that conversation?
Well, I would just say that they have characterized working with the governor's office, I think, very well in my experience. But I guess one thing that I would add, and that is these budgets are set typically the fall before we get here. And the governor goes through, works with the agencies as he has all year, and presents us with his recommendation in January. Well, we're now in March, and so there's a lot of things that even change from the fall when they were set, January when they were recommended, to today. And so it's our job, and we've got a phenomenal legislative services staff that help us really run some of these questions to ground. Some of them we may not, as a legislature, may not feel they're a good idea. Others, there's just changing information. And I will say this, the governor's staff and his office has been very good at working with us, sitting down. JFAC is really, as I view us, really the problem-solving committee. To say that there's no politics when you're in the State House would not be fair to anybody. But I would say JFAC is really a pragmatic committee. We look at issues, we look at problems, we look at opportunities, and make sure that we can provide the resources to solve those problems or capture those opportunities. And many of these opportunities actually come through our germane committees, people that are studying the policies, which we all sit on germane committees as well. But it's our job to put the resources towards promoting the germane committee's policies. And we take that seriously. We also are constitutionally bound to a balanced budget. So we have to keep the bigger picture in mind with everything that we do. On average, we've since I've been here, I would say the governor's office and recommendations have been not 100% adopted, but provide us a really good roadmap to start from.
Well, that's wonderful. I appreciated that comment. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and with primaries, people are registering for re-election, but you know the difference between a politician and a policymaker, and not that the same person can't be. It's not one or the other, but you know, a politician is in that environment is when you're promoting yourself to run for office and the story that you bring and what you're going to bring to that legislature. But what we want from politicians is for them to be policymakers. And you talked about JFAC as being the problem-solving committee, and you know when you have to just sit there and actually figure out the policy that will impact the state and what that means. That's when you're a policymaker. The people that the chamber wants, obviously, are serious policymakers to consider what makes Idaho a great place to do business and how it continues to be a great place to do business. So we're really grateful to have this conversation today with our policymakers on the JFAC team. You have to figure out that budget and where you go forward. So thanks for bringing that up, Senator Agenbrod. Now, since budget formation is ultimately the constitutional responsibility of the legislature, the governor doesn't get all their requests. Can you all think of an example of such a moment and what that taught you about state budget?
Go ahead, Senator.
All right, maybe I'll just jump into one that I think every day for the next week and a half, you'll see examples of where the committee has decided to go a different direction than the governor. It might just be simply a line item. In many cases, we may agree, and others there may be a significant difference. One that came through with the Department of Lands this week was a fire suppression savings account. The governor recommended $150 million in that account. The working group got together, which is a subset of JFAC that really delves deep into these budgets, and determined that we're about $40 million in arrears. Now, this is an account that we use to fight the state's fires. So when we bring in federal agencies, when we have locals, local landowners, it's a combination of a lot of people and a lot of expenses coming from different directions to fight fires. But we recognize that we're about $40 million in arrears with past fires. So we knew we had to fund that. Then we said, okay, we know we'll have future fires, but how far in the future do we try to put a savings account together? And we ended up actually with rather than the governor's recommendation of $150 million, we ended up with an $80 million appropriation to that account, which we feel is the appropriate amount, and it balances that with other requests. So what do we do with that other $70 million? And we're trying to look at the budget in a holistic manner and not be focused on any given area, and that will help us fund some of the other needs that may or may not be in the governor's recommendation and other parts of the budget.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Any other thoughts come to mind? Yes.
Well, for me, Jeremy, probably one of the most significant in the last couple of years has been using general funds for transportation needs. For years, my long-term co-chair who was here, Madam Maxine Bell, she coached me that we don't use general funds for transportation needs. Roads should pay for themselves. That's gas tax. That's other forms of dollars. Several years ago, had a very good conversation with Governor Little, and he told me not only were the Iowa State troopers not going to lose funds, which we converted a lot of their dollars in one fund that they received gas tax from to general fund to use on roads. He had convinced me that taxpayers should also have the benefit of applying some of our tax dollars to the needs of our growth and our roads. So you'll see in this year's budget some pretty good amounts of dollars, both from transfer funds from the excess general funds that we have, plus some of the ARPA dollars. Will be pretty significant amounts. And again, last year we put $80 million of general sales tax to the roads for bonding. And I've been supportive of all those in the last several years. So that's, for me personally, that was kind of a big change to think of using those general funds more for transportation dollars.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I like the change of circumstances too. Idaho has experienced a growth that it's never experienced before, and yeah, when you have those big changes, whether it's a state budget or your personal budget, you have to look at where your priorities are and where are you gonna pull from to meet your needs. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Representative. Representative Green, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I actually do want to, and one of the things that's really important is the process in which we go about setting these, and specifically, the governor puts forward his recommendation, and just currently this week, we have the transportation budget before us. Our work group is working through it, and while it's recommended within the governor's recommendation, there was a line item in there that our work group kind of honed in on and was like, okay, you need to explain yourselves a little bit more. And so this process is pretty comprehensive. While the governor puts forward his recommendation, the work group is going to also look at it through their lens. And it's incredibly valuable because we all come from different backgrounds. And so while we sit in those rooms, we get to look to those line items and ask, our departments, please explain yourself, give us an explanation. And then we shift it a little bit, in particular, the transportation budget, where, we asked for an explanation, they gave us one, but we're going to maybe go somewhat of a different direction a little bit. And so while he puts a lot of effort into his budget, the JFAC process, the subcommittees, we really dig into these a little bit more. And it's an incredible, valuable process. And it complements all of us who come from different areas throughout the state and representing constituents. We're able to take that and be impactful with these budgets. So it is a incredible process to participate in, and it's nice to have that opportunity with my colleagues.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for that, everyone. The next question I have for you is just individual members of JFAC. You specialize in certain areas of the budget. The members become the main points of contact for agencies who are impacted by those specialties. Would you mind discussing your areas of specialty in the budget and the challenges and opportunities that come with this role in public service? Can we start with you, Representative Green?
Yeah, sure thing. So obviously, I spent a lot of time on the transportation budget. And I also am really interested in the broadband piece. Any infrastructure enhancements is kind of where I'd like to spend much of my time. Although I'm also a freshman on JFAC, and so I'm learning a lot. I think in my first year, it was more or less just trying to get an idea of how this works. Moving into my second year, a little bit more impactful. I now understand more about the process going into it and work that actually occurs outside of the session. And so, but when I will say, if I'm looking through my lens and, utilizing my experience, it's definitely a lot of time spent on transportation. And I've also have fallen a little in love with our Parks and Rec department. So I spent a lot of time on that budget as well, because any opportunity to enhance our backyard playground is incredibly important. And so, but I will give kudos to several of my colleagues. There are very few of us, especially in the minority party, and some of my colleagues, they work every single budget and they work their tails off, and so incredibly impactful. But also the lens in which they're working through is because of their experience, and so being a citizen legislature and being able to leverage that into these policies and into these budgets, it's incredibly important.
Thank you, Representative. Senator Hagenbrod?
Thank you, Jeremy. So in my role as a co-chair, and I think my co-chair will also echo these comments, we have to step back and take really a more holistic view of the budgets rather than dive deep into some of them. But what I'll do is I'll speak to a little bit of before I was co-chair and maybe my working group. When I came in, the Senate had a need specifically on a couple of very large budgets, which are the Department of Corrections and the Health and Welfare, in both complex budgets. With my hospital board background, I sat on the Idaho Insurance Health Exchange Board, and then I've been a frequent flyer, kid with a motorcycle, a horse, run up on a farm into the emergency room. So I felt that I had a pretty good grasp on healthcare. But what I really didn't know is healthcare budgeting at the level that we do here in Idaho. So I would not even consider myself, after doing that for 5 years, to be an expert in that area because it is complicated. And even the people that work in that day in and day out have trouble getting their arms around it. So there's a lot of faith, knowledge, gut feeling that goes into these budgets because we're, as somebody pointed out to me early on, and I think this rings true despite my career in banking, we're really the bankers. We're not the managers of these areas. We have professional managers that the state has hired or we've contracted with. And we've got to step back and look at these things through the banker's lens and provide appropriate resources to serve the citizens of Idaho. So that's how I approach things.
Thank you, Senator. Representative Youngblood?
Yeah, totally would concur with my new co-chair. Again, this is my 4th year serving as co-chair on the House side, and we really have the responsibility of making sure these budgets work through our system of House and Senate, JFAC, and getting to the floor. And again, it's for me personally, it's pretty cool that we both have a banking background because it's really the numbers and watching those budgets that make it work. And again, as he mentioned earlier, my good co-chair, that we have a constitutional responsibility to leave here with a balanced budget, and that's critical. For me personally, when I got here, a lot of folks may remember previous Representative Darrell Bowles from Kenyan County. And Darrell served 12 years on JFAC. And when I got elected in 2010 and got put on JFAC, he grabbed me by the earlobe as a mentor and said, "Youngblood, you're going to work the bills that I work because nobody else wants to work them." And they ended up being all public safety. So I was with the military, the judicial, Supreme Court. I was working ISP budgets, all of those. But then again, like my co-chair with our banking background, I worked finance, insurance, and all those bills as well. But I have to compliment our team. We've got some great folks. I think of Representative Horman, who was a school trustee for 9 years. She knows the education process. I rely on Bundy, who's a school teacher. I rely on Representative Syme, who is a retired colonel in the Guard. These are guys that really understand a lot of the various budgets. And it's pretty cool, as also Representative Green, who works for ACHD. She knows roads. She knows the needs that we need to have. And again, that's what complements the whole Joint Finance Appropriations Committee. A great one this year, as my co-chair knows, Senator Cook. The guy's an IT specialist. I mean, every bill that comes through with software needs, he's right on top of them. So it's pretty awesome that we've got a broad team.
That's wonderful. Does anyone else want to highlight any of their other JFAC members for the job that they do in budgeting?
Well, I think I could chime in there, and really there isn't a member that shouldn't be highlighted. We have a few that participate just a little bit less on the committee. I won't call them out, but there is everyone that brings something to the table. And if it's nothing else, it's just questions that are relevant to the budget that maybe some of us hadn't thought of or asked. Even playing the devil's advocate on some of these budgets to ensure that we are doing the right thing with the taxpayers of Idaho's resources.
That's wonderful. Representative Green, any thoughts there?
No, I just echo much of what they said. This is a team effort. None of this can be done just one of us. Oftentimes we're doing these work groups and teams. We're coming in at 7 a.m. in the morning, and we're working through the lunch hour and through the evenings. It's something we do very. We don't take it very lightly, and with our teammates as we get the budgets through.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. One of the things I always like to highlight to our members is just how full-time this part-time job is that you all do. And you do it with a target on your back and a full public watching every step that you do. And appreciate all the hard work that you put into making Idaho a successful place to live and do business. So thank you so much for sharing that. One of the interesting aspects of budgeting is that your revenues can change. Even during the session. For example, the legislature signed a tax cut into law that essentially cleared $600 million of revenue from the budget process when we lowered corporate tax rates and income tax rates. So when events like this occur, how does JFAC respond? Senator Egenbrod, can we start with you?
Absolutely. Jeremy, we produce, or our legislative services staff produces a daily, we call it the green sheet. And it essentially is an ongoing tally of what's happening, not only in JFAC, but germane language that may have a financial impact that's coming in other parts of the legislature, whether it be the Senate or the House. So we have a tally going forward that we're trying to manage to, again, keeping a cushion at the bottom line of those general funds, most specifically those general funds. And we will adjust as need be. Again, hopefully we've got a big enough cushion there that allows us to adjust without making some significant policy changes in areas that are important to people within the building. So I'll kind of leave it there. I don't want to take the whole answer from my friends.
Representative Youngblood, would you like to share anything else?
Well, the first word that came to mind for me, Jeremy, is we approach it cautiously. I mean, we don't have any choice. And as my good co-chair, who I truly enjoy working with, understands budgets, you just cannot overspend. And that's, we're watching it every day. He mentioned the green sheet. In addition to that, our LSO staff are reporting to us every day, as well as the governor's office, who we work with very well. We all work together in combination with our leadership and saying, okay, where are we today? What percentage of spending are we at? And the thing I think folks need to know today is that, in the past, we budgeted on expenditures of 4 to 5% growth. Even last year, you might remember that we had a 5% holdback because we weren't sure where this COVID was going to go. And that's all been given back to the agencies this year, and knowing our numbers are growing, additional funds, but we've got to be cautious with that. And the thing that I try to tell folks now that we're up to about 8 to 10% growth is that look at where Idaho has grown. I about fell out of my chair the other day when I found out that we've got approximately over 7,000 new young students who have moved to Idaho in our school system. That's huge. And how can you budget on something like a 3 or 4% when you've got inflation at 9% and you've got a state that's just growing leaps and bounds? So it's not unusual to see that mark get back up there to like 8 to 10% spending. But we need to hold the line as close as we can. And again, I think that's why I love my home state and being conservative in what we do.
Thank you. Representative Green, would you like to add anything?
I don't think there's much more to add. It's just that we are watching very closely, and I applaud our staff. Our staff does an incredible job keeping us abreast of what's going on with the bills that are coming out of committee, but also, what that does to whichever agency it may necessarily impact. And so this is a well-oiled machine, and we all watch that bottom line and that green sheet and rely heavily on our incredible staff that makes everything move forward.
Thank you so much. So some researchers take a semaphore approach for budgeting, and when I say that, the semaphore is our the great traffic stuff. The red light budgeting reflects budgets that will look like if we experience an unexpected one time, like if we did during a recession. Yellow budgets reflect expected revenue. Green budgets, of course, reflect the goals that we reach for funds. The goals that we reach for when funds are gone. For the next 5 years, the state is projected to see budget surpluses. What are some of the high priority goals that you see as policymakers that will require this kind of capital investment? Senator Representative Green, let's start with you.
I'm sorry, I could only catch a little bit of what you were saying. I don't know if it's breaking up, but
no, we are having a little bit of an echo. I was hoping that was just that line, but I'm not sure where it's coming from.
I don't know what's. There's quite the echo. Am I okay?
I can hear you.
Okay, and I'm just going to guess what you said. I don't have my notes in front of me, but if I heard you right, would it be what the importance?
What priorities are is we're projected to see surpluses in the near future, next 5 years. What are some of those goals that you're looking at to say we need to be able to invest in these areas as we experience a surplus?
Oh, I go back to originally my initial comments, which is we have one-time infusions. We see our surplus. It is about time we take that and we take care of our deferred maintenance, whether it be at our municipality level with regards to sewer and water. But we also look to kind of our future, and that part of that future is how are we going to expand and accommodate our growth. That includes transportation, most certainly includes broadband. And so while we've got these federal dollars coming in, we've got this surplus, and we really do need to ensure there is a nexus between the two, and it's one-time expenditures, building out our future. That is the best use of these dollars. And we have to be careful how we do it. One-time expenditures should be one-time capital improvements. We at the JFAC and all of us on the committee, we recognize that if we're going to put forward something that has continued general revenue, general funds necessary in the future, then that's not utilizing these dollars, in my opinion, the best way. It is build our future, build it wisely, take care of our deferred maintenance, and position Idaho to be able to grow responsibly. And that also ensures not adding additional, like we like to say, additional government. This is not the time when to do it. This is time to take care of what is important to us, our infrastructure, and then build us out for the future.
Representative Youngblood. And maybe if we're not speaking, maybe we can all mute our mics and see if that helps.
That helps. Very good. Again, Jeremy, follow up with the good Representative Green, particularly on the one-time dollars that we've got. And I think you'll see us move forward with some pretty exciting things that are going on as far as maintenance going out 5 years. We've got a lot of state-owned properties that need a lot of maintenance and care. Obviously, I sit on a local highway commission. There's all kinds of needs for roads and bridges. I get concerned about bridges. People have kind of just put that to the wayside. I know Representative Green knows this. Throughout Idaho, we have bridges that are 70 plus years old. And I've got one over in Kenyan County we've been working on Highway 30. that bridge is so old, it's only got one way, one traffic access. And I know 12 school buses across that bridge every day. And those are the kinds of things we've really got to address and get taken care of. But I think in addition to that, I'm sure my good co-chair will reference that as well. We need to make sure that our reserves are in good order. Because if we know anything about my many years, 30 years in banking, there's highs and lows, and there will be a time when we're going to have to consider cutting back, watching what we're doing, paying attention to the dollars, and that's when we really need to have a good reserve base, which is what we're working on in addition. So again, I would turn it over to my good co-chair.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and I agree with actually what both representatives have said. We have to be real careful and look at these as one-time dollars and making investments. And again, I refer back to how would we run our household if we had an influx of money and our roof is leaking? Well, that's probably a good time to fix your roof or a little preventive maintenance if it isn't leaking yet, so it doesn't leak in years to come. But it is important that we match one-time expenses with one-time dollars and not bloat government or commit ongoing expenses that we wouldn't be able to fund. Now, surplus is all a relative term. Relative to what? Relative to what we collected last year, relative to what we projected, relative to our spending. So when we look out into the future, I think we see, at least for the next few years, probably a relatively robust revenue projections for Idaho. But one of the first bills that we passed this year was to curtail some of that revenue stream to the state with an income tax cut, 0.5% across all tax brackets. So we're recognizing that the dynamics in Idaho, the success that we've had through low regulations, great business climate, and certainly quality of life that attracts people, that maybe we have created an environment that was creating more revenue than we feel is appropriate for state government. So we turned around and gave some back right off the top. So I think you're going to see a balance of those type of things as we go forward. We also recognize that when you put $18 billion from the federal government into the state of Idaho, now this all didn't come directly to the state, but it did come to our citizens through unemployment benefits just across the board, the ARPA monies and the CARES monies. When you put $18 billion into an economy like Idaho, it is going to have an impact well beyond just the 18 billion, and it's going to have a tail. So how long will it take all of this to flow through to get to what would be a normal economy in Idaho? In my opinion, that's probably some years out, and we've got to be real careful about committing those ongoing expenses because we really don't truly know what that ongoing revenue stream is. So I would prefer to take the conservative approach and treat most of those excess dollars or surplus dollars as one-time expenditures to make those investments in all of the things that we've been talking about this morning.
Everyone, thank you so much for your time. We know how busy you are, and we certainly wish you the best of luck with the rest of the session as the last of the bills are introduced, and now you really have to go out and make those floor votes. But thank you so much for your service, and we will look forward to following you for the rest of the session. So thank you so much. Before we leave, I'd like to say one more time, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Optum, our sponsor also AT&T, and for your support and all of our media partners that help us share this message. And with that, we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.